You know, those times when you're really moving forward with momentum, but you get pulled back by something that's silent. It's almost invisible, but it's like this string that you can't freaking break. And you keep going back into the same patterns that you had before. And maybe there's another time where you don't go to those patterns and you like actually get to say, like, you notice it and then you decide not this time. That's what this show is about. That's what I'm breaking down today in this episode are those moments where you get to say not this time. Because if you're not doing that already, if you're not doing it in all the areas you want to in life, this is why this podcast exists. And I cannot wait to share the juicy topics we have today so you can understand what not this time actually means and why it's going to change everything for you. So the other day I was on a run with my husband and we were starting to go up a hill. And so my heart rate bumps up really, really high when I run anyway. And so my heart rate was really starting to get up and I felt like this glaze go over my eye and I immediately stopped. I like slowed down and I got really scared. And I had this glimpse of an awareness that this isn't about what's happening right now to me. This is about what's happened to me in my past. I want to break this down a little bit because this happens to us in so many different ways and we don't notice. And so as I was having like this glazed look, because it immediately went away and I was running and I mean, I pulled back, but I realized that I was so scared that I was going to pass out. Now, some people might have that fear, but I used to pass out all the time. I was really, really, really sick when I was in my early adulthood after I had my first daughter. I was super sick. I passed out all the time in public places. I'd wake up and there'd be like crowds around me and it was embarrassing. I was it wasn't just embarrassing. I just felt so like powerless. Like I couldn't actually just live my life and be free because this was happening to me constantly. I couldn't be left alone with my daughter without having someone there to watch both of us. And so I felt very trapped. I felt very constricted and I was always worried. I was always worried that I was going to pass out. It's happened to me at a grocery store and I just wake up and everyone's around and they're panicking. My husband was with me. Of course, he had to drive me there. I couldn't drive. This is really important to recognize about like how this was so deeply rooted in me. The first sign of what I felt like I might have passed out, which I was nowhere near passing out. That's what's really important to recognize that I was in no danger. But my mind and my body immediately went to that. And I went to this space of being safe, being comfortable, not allowing myself to experience that again because I was so scared of that being my reality once again. And I had to tell myself, that's not happening to me right now. I'm not sick. I am perfectly healthy. That is not the version of me. My body might have recognized it at that, right? You know, the body keeps score. Like, so it may have noticed and recognized that feeling and then immediately shut down, but not this time. This time I can keep running. I can do that this time. I have that freedom. I have that ability. And so that's just a small moment. Like, that's just one of those moments we don't even recognize. It's so easy in that moment to play it safe, to sugarcoat it and not actually dissect and understand why you felt resistance. It's so easy because I could have easily said, oh no, it's for my safety. I started to like, it felt like, it felt like I was pushing myself too hard or I was about to black out. But what it really was that I was scared. I was remembering something that happened to me in the past, something that was absolutely not happening to me in the present moment. And so that right there was a super quick, not this time moment. And these not this time moments are so profound. They are so life changing when we actually allow them to be present in our lives, because this can show up in our relationships with others and our conversations with others. It shows up when we start to give up on ourselves and we say, not this time. I don't actually live that pattern anymore. This is about noticing your patterns. And then what do we do with that pattern? I know dang good and well, you listening to this, you know of a pattern that you want to break. We all have them. It doesn't matter how long you've been on the journey, there's a pattern that you want to get rid of. And so, how do we do it? Well, first of all, you already know we have to start with awareness. We actually have to get aware of our patterns. So, we have to see them clearly. We have to see why we're attaching to them. We have to see why they're so present and why we need them in our life. And so, when you think about the pattern of me running, which again is a super simple, like mundane pattern, it's not even like a habitual pattern that disrupts my everyday life. But we're going to use that as an example because when you think about that, and we think about like that payoff of slowing down, well, the payoff that I received was that I felt safer. that I felt healthier, that I wasn't going to have to experience passing out on the ground and waking up to a crowd of people around me. So that was my payoff. It was safety. Payoffs are always about safety. So you have to understand that for yourself. Okay. But when we think not this time, that's what we're doing. We're realizing that we are not repeating patterns, but we have to be aware of our patterns. You have to be like super familiar with them. And if you're not familiar with yourself, or if you're ignoring what's going on in your life, you're going to keep repeating these things over and over and over. And I see this all the time with my clients where they'll just come and they're like, okay, well, I just, especially when I first started coaching, before I started to use the method that I use now, which is the trigger response method that we were just talking about briefly. Before this method was implemented, my clients would really spin. They would have a lot of awareness, but they would keep making the same patterns, the same choices over and over and over and over because they weren't breaking the pattern. They weren't saying, not this time. They weren't hitting that choice point where they say, I'm going to do and choose something differently. I'm going to recognize that whatever it is I'm scared of isn't happening to me now. And I don't have to bring that into my current reality. So those are those moments that they're so subtle. So we think we know what we're going to be doing. We think we know what we want, but we keep repeating those same patterns and behaviors. So why do we do that? Why, when I was coaching in the way where I didn't have this structured method that I walked people through, this trigger response method that is so incredibly powerful, why were they doing the same things? Okay. And now, why, whenever we have this method, why are my clients still doing the same things? Let me explain to that. What I mean by that is they're still doing the same things, but they're recognizing that it's a pattern that they have to break. So before there was frustration. So before there would be a pattern and there would be a commitment and the commitment would be broken to self and they wouldn't do the things that they said they were going to do. And it caused frustration. They were like, why do I keep doing this? I know better. We're talking about this. Like, why? And it caused so much frustration. That's where a lot of people stay. And that's where a lot of people in the self help space stay, in the spiritual space. Like, we stay in this space of just freaking frustration. And so, what's the difference now? You just heard me say, like, well, my clients will keep repeating the same patterns. Like, okay, then why do people pay you? Like, what's the difference? Well, the difference is that when they're repeating the same patterns now, they're recognizing them. And then instead of judging them and shaming them and causing frustration and resentment and really holding on to that and making it like another part of their identity, what they're doing is they're noticing the pattern and then deciding on their choice point, they're not this time moment. And they change things. And so over time, we are rewiring the subconscious mind. What sounds like such a massive thing, like sounds like such like you have to be, it has to be like so scientific, or like you need to like it's some like massive like program that you're going to be going through. But the way that we rewire our subconscious mind is through repetitive action, and repetitive action doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean that we have to have this pattern go a certain way every single time, the exact same way, or it doesn't work. That's not what we're talking about. What it means is that there's a choice and a disruptor to create a new pathway, period. That's it. It's pretty simple. And so that's the difference. And that's the difference you're likely looking for. Because I can almost guarantee if you do some reflection right now and you look back and you think, okay, the last time I tried to make a change or I had a habit and it didn't go well, what did I do? I've been frustrated with myself. And I'm like, why are you like this? Why do we keep doing this? Like, what's the problem? We looked for a problem to solve. And that is a freaking shiny carrot. Because when we're always looking for a problem to solve, our brain feels good. Like, it's like, yes. And if there's not a problem there, guess what we're going to do? We're going to create one. Like, yeah, I'm going to make a problem where there's not a problem. Of course, I'm going to do that. The brain needs something to do. So we'll find something to do. It's going to chase the shiny carrot. It looks good. It looks yummy. So it's going to create a problem. That's when you get to realize I don't have to have a problem. I don't need to be a problem to solve. I just need awareness to notice a pattern and to make another change. It doesn't have to be a problem. You don't have to live in that resentment and that frustration that you have with yourself, because that is the biggest disruptor. That is the absolute biggest disruptor. So one of the analogies I like to use, that I like to put a disclaimer on it. I'm not saying don't feed stray dogs. I'm just saying it's a saying. And it's don't feed the stray dog. It's going to stay around. The dog will now think it's home. because you're feeding it, that's exactly what you're doing with your thoughts. So these less than desirable thoughts, this frustration, this anger, this like need to always change and feel bad about yourself and better yourself in a negative way, like where we're looking at it, you're bettering yourself because you're not good enough right now. What you're doing is you're feeding that dog, and that dog stays and stays and stays. And that's the reality. Now that's home. The home is you don't like yourself. Home is that you beat yourself up. Home is that you never believe in yourself. Home is all of these negative patterns, these negative thought cycles that you're in, and these negative behaviors, because you're going to notice them. You're going to notice these thoughts, and you're going to make them your reality. You're going to confirm that into your reality every single freaking time. Now, if we don't feed it, if we don't give it what it's looking for, which is that food, it's going to move on. So those thoughts don't become our belief systems. They don't become our paradigms that we live out of. So again, don't come at me for that analogy. I'm not telling you not to feed a dog. I'm just using it, right? So we'll keep it that. We'll keep it there. But don't feed it. Don't give it momentum. Don't let it make its home. Don't let these beliefs and these thought patterns be home to you. Choose something different. Choose freedom. Choose something that opens you up, and not in a way where it's like, oh, you're so horrible with who you are right now. Ugh, like what you do, you need to be so much better. Your higher self is calling and you suck right now. Like that is such an icky game to play, and it does not feel good. You're perfect the way you are right now. Just notice the patterns that keep you suffering. And as you know, suffering isn't just like you're in a ball in a corner. It just means that there's a disruption of your peace. It's less than desirable. Like you're not feeling as good as you can. Your connections aren't as strong. You're not connected to yourself. You're not listening to your own intuition. You're only listening to your terrible, terrible thought cycles that are incredibly disruptive. And it feels so much good to go down the cycle of the negativity because it's known and it's familiar and it's normalized. But you don't have to do that. You get to make choice. You get to have moments where you say, not this time. I don't have to silence my voice anymore. I'm not that little girl who got punished for speaking anymore, whatever it is for you. I'm not somebody who can't walk into a room and speak my mind. I don't have to do that. Not this time. I'm safe in who I am. I'm safe in my thoughts and my opinions, and I'm allowed to do that. Whatever your story is, you get to realize that that pattern was created and it can be disrupted and changed 100% of the time. There is no caveat to this. There's not. It doesn't matter what happened to you. It doesn't matter what you were conditioned to think or to believe or what trauma you went through. You can actually reprogram this. And I see it over and over and over. But it comes from choice points. It comes from that not this time. It comes from the awareness and then the action. There's no other way around it. And so if you're like really feeling called, if you're really feeling like connected to like shifting and changing and being a version of you that is just like operating at what is deemed as a higher level, you have to do that without thinking there's something wrong and broken with you today. Because we don't get to that perceived higher level by thinking that we suck or that we're broken, that we need to be fixed. Because if you think like that, you're feeding that dog again. And there will always be something to fix. You will always find something that's just not right. So I had a conversation the other day, and it was really about just like the human condition and how, people can be pretty incompetent in very many different ways. And we all are. Like, we all have our level of being incompetent. We have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. But what happens is when we really focus on the things that we are not good at or that other people aren't good at, we're always going to see that. And we're never going to see the strength of another, and we're never going to see the strength of ourselves, because we're always looking at how everything needs to be fixed and changed and bettered, instead of just thinking, holy crap, you are so good at this. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so good at this. I'm not good at that, but I'm so good at this. And so we're highlighting these pieces of ourselves that are really allowing us to grow, but not in a way that we're like suppressed. A client like sent something to me the other day, and it was like, I'm just going to like paraphrase, but she was talking about the work that she did with me is exactly this. It's this work that like a lot of personal development, self-help, spiritual journeys, it always plays off of like this like darker, less than desirable side of us and how we need to change that to be better. But what really happens is we start to focus on what we want. We start to focus on our strengths. We start to focus on the things that we actually want to cultivate and create. And then it's not that we just all of a sudden get better at something. Sometimes we do, and sometimes it's just irrelevant. What happens is our focus isn't on that. So then we can finally excel. So it's not about changing any part of us. It's about highlighting where we want to grow and what we want to achieve and how we can do that with our strengths and not so much focusing on all of the reasons why you can't and all of the weaknesses. And so all of this comes together because when you start to notice the pattern of just degrading yourself and downgrading what you're thinking, how like you just think that you're just kind of a terrible person right now, when you start to notice that, your life starts to change when you start to make a different choice, when you start to believe that you actually can. When you shift that perspective, you start to take a different path. That's where your power is. That's where it lies. That's when things really start to pick up. And it feels so good. And that's the work that you're doing right now. That's why you're here. So that client experience, it wasn't like this one thing that we changed about her. It was how we stopped focusing on the one thing she thought she needed to change and started focusing on what was really, really happening and what was really, really, really felt good and aligned for her. And then boom, everything started rolling. All the momentum, the fear started to dissipate, and they weren't as strong. So that doesn't mean like, oh my gosh, I'm going to think about how great I am and then everything works out. This is not toxic positivity, and this is not mantraing your way into manifesting your life's goal. That's not what we're talking about either. It's I can focus on what I'm good at, and that becomes so true and real to me that I stop looking for all of the reasons why I can't. There's such a huge difference. And the power becomes in that. And then you have more capacity to deal with the negative thought spirals, the things that pull you back, the things that are a little more uncomfortable and less desirable. That is opening up for you to be able to do the work to move through the triggers, to be able to do the work to rewire the thoughts and the beliefs and the attachment to the thoughts and the beliefs. It is that absolutely powerful. So those are some not this time moments. I want to hear your not this time moment. This whole podcast is going to be centered around different aspects like this. We're going to be going deep, deep, deep into the internal world, and we're going to look at the awareness part of it, and then we're going to look at what we need to do to shift it. That is what we're talking about. And I want to hear yours. What was your not this time moment this week? Where did you get challenged? Where do you want to celebrate? Whatever that is, I want to hear from you. So drop it below, send it in, email it in, whatever you want to do, whatever feels aligned and feels comfortable for you. I want to hear from you. So I will see you next week.